Happy Wednesday night, everyone. Sit tight. We're going to get started in just a minute here. Welcome, everyone. I see you all filtering in. We've got just a minute. We are doing some tech in the background, and when that is all ready, we will get started. Brian is kicking us off with the all righta in the Q&A. Thanks for that, Brian. All right, everybody, we are going to kick off. Welcome to the Arlington Committee of 100. Our program for this evening is Reopening Arlington, County Government and Schools in 2022. My name is Hannah Dannenfelser. I'm the chair of the Arlington Committee of 100. I'm going to be your moderator for this evening. If you're watching us on Facebook Live and you think this is something your friends would like to hear, please consider sharing that Facebook Live to your page. If you'd like to stay in touch with us, please like and follow our Facebook page. We publish our events through email announcements as well as Facebook events, and we'd love to have you continue to join us. I also want to welcome the elected officials who we spotted so far who are joining us today, County Board Member Matt DeFerrante and Commissioner of Revenue Ingrid Maroy. If we may have had another couple elected officials who have joined in with us since we checked that list. So if I missed you, I would welcome a chat so I can thank you for being here. Please go ahead and mark your calendar for our next program, which is going to be on Wednesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. We are still finalizing details on that topic, so stay tuned, watch your email box, and that'll be coming shortly. Before we begin, just briefly on behalf of the Arlington Committee of 100 Board, I'd like to take a minute to ask for your support of our organization and our mission. We are a highly civically engaged group with a passion for sharing timely information on current issues from the experts. We very much miss seeing you in person. This virtual format has certainly had some benefits and some learning opportunities, but some of our costs remain. As we advance our mission, we continue to have some of these small operating costs to stay up and running, including the Zoom platform we're on right now. I'd like to ask you to consider becoming a member of the Arlington Committee of 100 to show your support for our educational mission and to give us the ability to keep on going for the remainder of this year, but also for many years to come. Your donation of $25 or more counts you as a member of our organization, and we would be very grateful for your support. There is a link in your chat box. If you are on Facebook Live, take a look at the comments. You will see a link there to donate. And certainly if you are still someone who writes checks, you are welcome to mail a check to the address on your screen. All right, well, tonight we are kicking off 2022 with Mark Schwartz, who is our Arlington County Manager, and Dr. John Mayo, who is the COO of Arlington Public Schools. You'll notice we often plan these programs a couple months in advance, and we start the marketing without really knowing what the status of the world will be at the time of the program. So I say that just to explain that the term reopening could probably be debated in terms of today due to the Omicron variant. At the time that we were planning this, we were very eager about the idea of reopening, and I know we are still very much living with COVID and its effects each day. I am really looking forward to hearing from Mark and Dr. Mayo on what they foresee for this year. As we launch into our program for tonight, I want to remind you that our panel will be followed by a question and answer session featuring questions from the audience. You can use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions. Regarding the Q&A, many of you who have joined us regularly have heard this from me quite a number of times. I want to remind our audience that the Arlington Committee of 100 is very much an educational platform and not an advocacy organization. This is where people come to learn and ask questions on timely community issues so they can be well informed. And we certainly welcome and encourage you to use that information to go out into the many other wonderful organizations in Arlington that participate in advocacy and are places to have your voice heard. So in that vein, as you submit your questions, please keep in mind that if it is concise and to the point, I am much more likely to be able to answer it in the Q&A period. We have a very limited time in Q&A. We always wish we had more time. So I do my best to get to as many as possible, and concise and to the point questions make that job a lot easier. We really only choose the questions that are in the form of a question. That does not include rhetorical questions, and that does not include statements that have added a question mark to the end. We will do our best to get to as many of those as we can, and thank you in advance for participating and engaging and being a part of this with us tonight. A thank you to our program committee who developed this program, led up by Delegate Patrick Hope and Jerry Laporte. The program tonight was coordinated by Jerry Laporte, who's our vice chair and program committee co-chair, as well as Doug Schleffler, who is a member of our program committee. So a big thank you to Jerry and Doug for your work. And Scott, I'm going to apologize. So y'all who join in regularly realize that Scott is behind the scenes making me look good while I am working hard against him to do the opposite in some cases, like when I create a blank slide. So sorry about that, Scott. That's what that is. He is. You can go ahead and take the slide down, Scott. Sorry about that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mark Schwartz, who is our Arlington County Manager. He was named the Arlington County Manager by the County Board in January 2016 after serving as the Deputy County Manager. He's been an Arlington resident since 1985, and he has an extensive background in financial management, strategic planning, and administration. As a county manager, if you don't know his job necessarily, think of him as the CEO of Arlington County government. He reports directly to the Arlington County Board. Mark, if you'd like to correct me in how I phrase that, you certainly can you're more than welcome. I may have taken some liberties there. He also is a prolific player of the game Hearts. We were just chatting about that in the green room. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mark. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and I want to thank everybody with the Committee of 100, and welcome also John Mayo, who's here with me this evening. I'm going to try to walk through a couple of things. One is a little bit of a retrospective on where we've been over the last 2 years, and then a few thoughts about some of the issues that face us as we go forward. Now, we can't start anywhere without acknowledging the really sad fact that as of today, we've had last count 285 Arlington residents die from COVID, and we've had many more who've been hospitalized and sick. I know that we've been focusing on really, 2022 seems so immediate to us. The first 10 days, we've had about 30,000 new cases in Arlington County, but it's the deaths and the serious hospitalizations that really are the things that sort of eat at me a lot, and just wanted to start out there. We've had in the last 2 years a number of businesses that have had to close. We've had people lose their jobs, and a lot of significant impact on people who've been renting and trying to put food on the table. Frontline jobs, residents with lower incomes have been hit a little bit harder than that. And, I always start out when I'm talking with employees, I'm the first to acknowledge this has affected me, which is that, a sense of sort of anxiety and, loss and isolation over the last 2 years. And I would say especially over the last few months, a sense of confusion, because we had thought that we were turning the corner, and it seems like with the Omicron variant, things just sort of spin a little bit more in a more confused fashion. So back in February of 2020, so almost 2 years ago, I sent my first note to county employees talking about the coronavirus and said that we'd do what we could and I'd keep everybody informed, thinking that we might have a little bit of a challenge ahead of us. March 13th of 2020, the governor declared a stay-at-home order and I issued an emergency declaration that is now the longest declaration in the history of the county. And some of those ups and downs since then, I'm not going to disagree with the title of tonight's program about reopening, but I would tell you, and I've said this all along to employees and to members of the board and the community, we've never closed for business. As a matter of fact, what we had to do is we had to reinvent how we did our business. So we have in the fields, obviously, of emergency management, whether it's our police, our fire, our 911 dispatchers, the people who repair our water mains and sewers. They've been showing up to work every single day. The pandemic hasn't changed that at all. There were a number of months where they showed up where they didn't have the benefit of vaccines, and we worked really hard with them, making sure that they stayed safe. We have, for most of the period of time, been able to pick up trash, keep our streetlights maintained, provide public transportation. We did originally, early on, have to close our recreation centers and gyms and libraries, but the staff that was there pivoted and did a whole bunch of different things. They helped deliver food. They helped answer the 703-228-7999 COVID hotline with dozens and hundreds of questions from residents. And we also, in many ways, as I said, reinvented how we were able to deliver services. We continue to do inspections virtually. We continue to do permitting virtually. We extended Wi-Fi access and at a number of places. We delivered meals to seniors. We offered telehealth. We stood up temporary outdoor seating areas or TOSAs to try to keep our restaurants going. We had PUDOs, pick up and drop off areas that we created along the right of way. We actually even found ways to do some of our 911 work remotely with a breakthrough in technology that's been emulated across the country. And we did all of this while simply trying to pay attention to all the advice we were getting on how to handle the pandemic. We tried not to remember, but don't forget early testing when we had people pulling up at the North Quincy Street property to get those nasal swabs, which were sort of brain scratches. We had to follow the governor's orders about the number of people who could gather. We were told to wash our hands several times a day, singing happy birthday twice. We could only get together in groups of 10. And remember when the vaccine first rolled out, that was traumatic for the community, for county staff. We went through phases. Why were those phases chosen? Who was in what group? Why were they in that group? How many vaccines were we getting each week? Why weren't there vaccines for people below a certain age? When were different groups going to be eligible? When were boosters coming? And all along, we managed somehow to keep the business of government going. And over the past year, we did an enormous amount on collective bargaining, a community oversight board, just continuing to do our business. We couldn't have done it without help from the community. For example, Arlingtonians helping each other, neighbors helping neighbors, our complete vaccination committee, our medical reserve corps, our community energy response teams, thousands of hours of support, PTAs, distributing food, people working to support retailers. And we thought as we were inching towards the end of 2021 that we were able to go out again and sort of hang out with people, maybe get together for holidays. But with Omicron here, that hasn't proven to be as easy as we thought. A little bit about what we're doing now and what some of the challenges are ahead. We have right now, actually for all county employees, they are required to either receive a vaccine, a full set of vaccines by February 1st, or to receive an accommodation for medical or religious reasons, or they'll be going on leave without pay in about 2 weeks, and then terminated on March 1st if they haven't complied with that mandate. We might see some degradation in service. I definitely think this is the right thing to do. Right now, about 93% of our workforce is vaccinated. We're asking employees to stay home and quarantine or isolate. There's been a lot of conversation about how many days that should be. The Center for Disease Control came out with a new set of recommendations. We have been sticking with the previous guidance that they provided before this most recent set, but making adjustments as needed to make sure that our police and fire and those services I talked about are able to, be continued. We're going to have a lot of challenges ahead for us, not only with staffing. I think today and probably tomorrow, one or two of our branch libraries have had to close because we don't have staff. We have a number of revenue and fiscal impacts, which I didn't mean to skip over, but have been significant. We have done 4 operating budgets in the last 2 years. We've done 3 CIPs in the last 3 years because the circumstances just keep changing. We've been working really hard to make sure people get to stay in their houses and have the food that they need. So the challenges that we really face going forward aren't necessarily providing library services or community center services. The challenges we have are putting together budgets in an environment. For 50 years, we've had a community that's been based on the premise that our commercial space would be full and our businesses would help pay for all those amenities that our residents use, including our school kids and other services. We have right now approaching a 20% vacancy rate in our office market. Unlike 5 years ago, where we had a lot of strategies to figure out how to do that, I think what we see is a really permanent change in the way our economy is going to work going forward. So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how we address that challenge and whether there are new approaches that are required. Thank God that Amazon is here. If they hadn't been, we'd be in a much worse situation than we are now. We have to focus on how to provide those services, and that is one of the challenges we have, still having to engage our residents, pave our streets. One of the real benefits we've had is our virtual engagement. I think people are more involved. And so I've covered a lot of things there. I really wanted to give a shout out to our business community and also to our residents and advocates for keeping us on our toes. And I have talked plenty. So I have exhausted my speech and I've exhausted myself. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Hannah. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. John Mayo. Dr. Mayo came on to Arlington Public Schools in July of last year in 2021 to be the newly created position of COO. Prior to joining APS, he was the deputy superintendent for Petersburg City Public Schools in Petersburg, Virginia, down in the Richmond area. He's been an educator for over 22 years in roles as a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, assistant superintendent. He's worked in administration in several school districts within the Commonwealth of Virginia and Maryland. The COO role is part of the superintendent's reorganization that is designed to strengthen operations and provide the schools, the students, the teachers, and the staff with the needed supports and resources. When Dr. Mayo and I were talking earlier, right before this program, he has the background both from big city schools like in Baltimore and small county schools like in Baltimore County in a smaller city down in Petersburg. So he's kind of got background from quite a few different areas that he is bringing us here in Arlington. So Dr. Mayo, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you again for that warm introduction, and good evening to everyone. And thank you for this opportunity to share what Arlington Public Schools has done since the inception of the pandemic to reopen schools and to keep our schools open. We all understand the challenging times we are in at the current moment, and it will take everyone working together to keep Arlington open while at the same time protecting the health and safety of citizens of this county, as well as the employees. At this time, I'm going to share my screen. I do have a slide deck I would like to share just to kind of recap what has been going on within Arlington Public Schools in collaboration with Arlington County government since the reopening back in 2020. Sorry about that. Okay, so the reopening timeline. So APS, like all school districts across the Commonwealth, closed doors to students and staff on March 13, 2020. There was an executive order from the governor at the time due to the inception of the pandemic. And the field of education since that time has changed, as well as how we as a society interact with each other and carry on daily life activities. As guidance was provided from various sources, such as the CDC, Virginia Department of Health, and Virginia Department of Education, APS, like other school districts, gradually reopened schools during the 2020-2021 school year. During the 2020-2021 school year, students were afforded the option of returning to face-to-face instruction or remaining in a virtual environment to continue learning. At the end of the 2020-2021 school year, families were provided the option of enrolling their child or children into the virtual learning program or opting for face-to-face instruction. While approximately 50% of the families opted to remain virtual once APS reopened during the 2020-2021 school year, we had approximately 3% opt for virtual learning for this school year. Since the start of the school year, we have seen many challenges occur in the present pandemic, wherein 2 variants have contributed to a spike in COVID-related cases in Arlington and across the world. Despite the hurdles that we have been presented with, we are committed to remaining open for the duration of this school year. When you think about public education, then and now, I just wanted to kind of just get everyone to reflect. Prior to March 2020, when you thought about education, terms such as social distancing, PPE, isolation, quarantine, pandemic, community spread, asymptomatic, symptomatic, and you get the picture, generally were not terms that were pertinent to conversations when you were talking to someone within the field of education. However, these are terms that are now used daily as we continue to navigate during this unprecedented time. While the noted terms have become part of our daily vocabulary, safety remains a priority, and I want to again remind everyone our commitment to remaining open for in-person learning. The variant reminds us of how important layered health and safety measures are. No single strategy will effectively reduce the spread, but when we consistently implement masking, get vaccinated, screening daily, and staying home when one is not feeling well, all these efforts have proven to be effective. APS will continue to require masks for all, regardless of vaccination status, inside our schools and on our buses. We have also secured a supply of KN95 masks and filters for APS provided masks, as well as home test kits for every member of our staff and every student within Arlington. I cannot stress enough the importance of completing the daily health screening. As you can see here, and schools will continue to provide outside lunches when available and when possible, as weather and staffing allow them to operate as such. School leaders will be able to provide more guidance and detailed information regarding their school and how they are operating for our outdoor lunches at this time. We need everyone to opt into weekly testing, and we understand some of the challenges we have experienced this week with the new vendor that APS has secured, and we are working to correct these concerns we have noted with the vendor as well as with VDH. And of course, vaccination is key, and we'll continue we will continue with our rapid response measures for contact tracing, quarantine, and isolating protocols. Since the inception of the pandemic, education, just like many other sectors, has noted many challenges such as declining enrollment, revenue shortfall, educational options, staffing shortages, constant changes in guidance, mental health, variants, and supply chain issues. These challenges have created problems with the normal operations, not only for schools, but corporations across the world. The CDC revised its guidance on December 27th regarding quarantining and isolation moving it from 10 days to 5 days. APS has provided guidance on this decision through the APS School Talk Superintendent's Updates for January 12th. We have also included infographics regarding the need for one to quarantine or isolate, coupled with noting we will continue to require students to remain out for 10 days if they're required to isolate. As noted with the CDC guidance, APS cannot maintain distancing consistently coupled with lunches. Therefore, we are, as neighboring school districts as well, are opting to keep the 10-day requirement for our students. Additional guidance is located on our webpage and will be updated as guidance may or may not change. So let me talk a little bit about instruction during the quarantine. APS is committed to ensuring students who are out of school on quarantine can access instruction, and these students will have access to asynchronous learning and one of the following, beginning on day 3 of their quarantine. Limited live stream instruction or recorded mini lessons linked to standards, and also collaborative work via Canvas and Google Tools. We're also encouraging our younger students through a meeting today just with our principals. Could we please make sure that our younger students are ensuring that they are aware of how to get on virtually or to navigate through Canvas and being able to log onto their iPads in the event of a virtual situation. So to discuss that a little bit regarding reverting to a virtual learning environment, our priority, of course, as I've mentioned, is to keep APS open for in-person instruction. Switching classes or school to a virtual learning environment, even for a short period of time, will be a last resort. We will make those decisions on a case-by-case basis in consultation with the Arlington County Public Health Division. Factors that will be considered will be the number of staff and students who have tested positive, the number of students in quarantine, the number of staff absent for COVID-related reasons, and the level of transmission of the virus in classrooms or a school. As Mark mentioned as well earlier on, we are also exhibiting some staffing challenges. APS, like other school districts across the country, continues to have issues or challenges finding and attracting talent for vacant positions. There's been a reduced workforce in the field of education since the pandemic, and competing industries are attracting talent away from the educational positions that you see at this particular time, from teachers to our support staff positions. And staffing challenges are expected to continue for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. So one may ask, what exactly is APS doing at the building level? We are identifying substitute teachers for our sub pool. In the APS School Talk today, we actually have a link to our webpage for individuals who are interested in serving as a substitute to assist us in this during this time period. We also are identifying another teacher or staff member to provide coverage, and this includes a daily list of volunteers from central office who meet the qualifications. We're also looking to pair 2 classes or grouping multiple classes together when needed and when possible based on space and grade levels. So to that end, looking at education, present and future, we are all in this together as a community, and it will take all of us to keep our schools open moving forward. And Hannah, that concludes the presentation.
Great, thank you, Dr. Mayo. Mark, I'm going to invite you to come back on and turn your camera on and unmute. And we have quite a number of questions. To everyone in the audience, you're welcome to put those questions in the chat. A reminder that concise questions are much more likely to be answered. I already saw a couple really long ones, and I just am not able to read those while we are moving in live time. So if you put your question concisely, I'm much more likely to be able to ask it in the Q&A. So getting started here, Elizabeth was asking about, to you, Dr. Mayo, when we be providing all APS employees and students and transportation employees with N95s or choose one, I don't know, these KF94. I didn't hear you mention for one, are you planning to? She says when, but I'm gonna ask a question first. Are you planning to? And if so, when would that be?
Yes, we are providing KN95 masks to all staff as well as students. We have already started that disbursement of those masks to employees. We're still working to get that completed across all of our employee groups. But that is definitely something we're working on. We are waiting through some supply chain issues with the filters for some of our younger students for the APS fitted mask. So we are in the process of getting those masks in. And as we're getting those masks in, we're turning that turnaround time very quickly to get those distributed out to our schools. On top of the mask, we're also providing home test kits to every student as well as to every staff member. And with those home test kits, there are actually 2 tests in each of those kits that we'll be able to utilize. Parents and families will be able to utilize at home as a need, hopefully as for assurance. But at the same time, we will be implementing our own model of a test to stay program. APS did apply for such. However, we were not granted as some of our neighboring school systems for the test to stay program. So as a result, we're implementing our own test to stay program, wherein we will use the additional kits that we received for that program.
Could I ask you to take just maybe about 30 seconds to explain what is a test to stay program? I'm not sure if I know, maybe some in our audience do know, but I don't. So I imagine other people might be wondering.
So with the test to stay program that we'll be implementing, it's in the event someone is a close contact. So let's say Johnny's in a classroom and Jimmy and Susie, and Jimmy actually maybe has tested positive and the other 2 students were actually a close contact. So with that model, as long as they're not showing any symptoms, we will be testing the 2 students that were in close contact during that time period versus saying you must go ahead and quarantine at this time. So there are 2 different definitions. Quarantine, which is someone who has been potentially exposed to COVID or close contact, I should say, when someone is in isolation, they have tested positive.
Great, thank you. I just have a note here. I just want to welcome School Board Chair Barbara Cannon has joined in with us. So I know I recognized our elected officials earlier and I didn't catch Barbara. So welcome, Barbara. Thanks for being here. Katie is asking, how is APS going to address staffing issues now and for next year? What she builds on this with, will the admin staff step in to substitute like as some other school districts have?
Yes, that is something we're currently doing. As part of the presentation I mentioned, as far as with those staffing shortages, we are sending staff members out in our central office actually every evening starting. So my phone will be buzzing here quite frequently from 7 until 10 o'clock. We send updates to determine what our fill rate is looking like for the upcoming school day. And then we're looking at those schools wherein maybe we have 4 or 5 positions at this particular time that have not been filled by a substitute. And we're then putting a schedule together to get individuals who are in other departments to go out and support schools during that time period. So we've put a very strategic plan in place to ensure that we are providing as much support as we can to our schools, but we also have to understand, and this is something I shared as well with some staff members, it's not only teachers that we have concerns with as far as the staffing shortages, but also our support staff. So the first face a child sees in the morning, more than likely, is a bus driver. We're having challenges there as well, as far as with some of our bus drivers who may be out for various reasons, as well as the number of vacancies we currently have within our bus for our bus driving position. Food service workers are another concern, wherein in some of our schools, we only have 2 food service workers. So in the event one of those food service workers may need to be out, we have to then try to figure out how can we make sure that kids are still going to be served breakfast as well as lunch on a daily basis. So there are a lot of different variables that we're taking into consideration and trying to find ways to provide that level of support to assist our schools, but also our support staff in the various needs that we actually are encountering during this time period.
Okay. One thing, every once in a while in this Q&A, we send out some links of things. One thing I'm gonna ask, I see Dulce in the audience here today. Sorry, I'm putting her on the spot here, but I'm wondering if she wouldn't mind putting in the Q&A box so we can pull the link for people, if we have audience members who are interested in being substitute teachers, if we can put that out in the chat box of the audience. So hopefully she's at her computer screen in this moment. So if you wouldn't mind shooting that in, we will push that out because I know many in the audience are wondering how they can support. So I want to make sure that is out there. Sorry, just a sec. I'm going to our list. Are there, Lisa asked, you said case-by-case basis in your presentation, so that may address this question, but I'm just going to clarify. Lisa's asking, are there specific metrics for return to normal in the schools, similar to the metrics that we had back in 2021 during the reopening?
I'm assuming if we need to revert to a virtual learning for some various reason because of, well, I mean, we're going to continue
or return to normal, I guess she would mean, you know, it's not, if y'all are in person, then I guess return to normal primarily would be around kids being inside for lunch consistently and having less protocols in place.
Well,
that's what I would interpret return to normal. I'm taking liberties with Lisa's comments.
Well, we will continue to follow that guidance from our from CDC, VDH, as well as our local health department. As far as when we can do different things, we will continue with our layered approach as well as with those mitigation strategies that we currently have in place moving forward, and pretty much not getting lax during this time period, especially with the variant that's out now and who knows what may come later. So continuing with the way we're doing things currently. And right now, this is our new normal, unfortunately. So we have to really start taking a look at that as well. If you think about it, in February of 2020, when you walked into a schoolhouse, you did not see people walking around with masks on. That's a norm now. That's actually a requirement for us. A term of employment, you must be vaccinated. So it's just, education has just changed drastically over the last 2 years. And we're definitely seeing seeing some of those concerns from those staffing shortages, and also just how we're able to operate on a daily basis in some cases. So right now, for the foreseeable future, I say what you're seeing right now is going to continue, not only in Arlington, but across the country.
Thanks. And Dr. Mayo, I keep picking on you, so I'm going to give you a break for just a sec. Mark, I've got a question for you here from John. You know, and as soon as so I'll tell you, I get these questions screened a little bit, even to me, I get the first names, but sometimes I see these questions and I think I know which John this is from. And Mark, I think you're going to know, exactly which John this is from. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Now that the proposed fiscal year 2023 county budget is under construction, can Mark please provide some details as to the current revenue and expenditure trends and what that could mean for such variables as the real estate tax rate and the full-time employee staffing numbers across Arlington County going forward?
Thanks for that question, Hannah and John. We are
Mystery John. Who knows which John?
Mystery right? John. We are just a little bit more than 48 hours away from an event that happens once a year where people are able to go online and find out what their individual, if they own a single family property, what their assessment is. That'll be up on Friday evening. So I have a really good sense. I don't want to spoil things, but that the revenue picture for our real estate revenue, which makes up about 60% of what we receive in the way of tax revenue, is a little bit better than I thought it was going to be back in the fall. The residential real estate market continues to be strong, especially in the single family sector. And our business sector really took a hit last year, and we still see some lingering of that, but it's not as bad as we had thought. So the revenue situation has improved. I really gone out of my way this year to not talk about and assign a number to say there's a huge gap between revenues and expenses, given that things have been in such a state of flux. But in preparation of the budget, I'd say that we're going to bring in a budget that's obviously in balance and consistent with the guidance that the county board provided me. They were very strong in suggesting that I provide a budget that did not include a tax rate increase. Given that residential homeowners will be seeing an increase enough in their bill, given the increase in values of their properties. And I'd say the biggest challenge we have right now, and I want to give some credit to our board, is something that John talked about, and you won't, John Mayo, you won't hear enough about this, which is the challenge. We're going through what's called the Great Resignation now, and the challenge of keeping staff. And, not only are staff operating under incredibly difficult conditions, but we have inflation in the economy. So one big thing you'll see in my budget, consistent with what we talked about late in the fall, is already an increase for salaries for staff who've gone without increases over the last 2 years. I think it's going to be a budget that is not going to have any cuts in it. And going to have a lot of money going towards compensation, as it should, and maybe a few selected programs and priorities. So I always like to joke that every budget year is average. In other words, it's a year we're in the middle of, which is going to be better than next year and worse than last year, but that's comes to average. But actually, this time around, we're going to be better than last year, and I can't speak about what's going to happen next year. So all around, being slightly optimistic.
Okay, great, thank you for that. Dr. Mayo, I'm going to come back to you here. Christina is asking, how is APS preparing for robust summer learning opportunities, including and in addition to summer school?
Okay, we will be having some meetings in the near future regarding what our summer school model will be looking like. Working with our Chief Academic Officer, Bridget Loft, and her team to determine how our summer school should look for this upcoming school year, upcoming summer school, excuse me. So I really do not have any other information at this time to really share in regards to what the summer school model will look like, but we will be having some robust discussion in regards to how the summer school program will run for this summer of 2022.
Is there, Todd was asking, and I'm consolidating a couple questions that are around summer school and taking some bits and pieces. Todd was asking if APS has taken steps to be identifying the need. Is that, as Bridget's working, do we know what the need is going to be for summer school? Do we have any projections, anything there?
Well, ultimately, the need is probably going to be anything in the area of literacy as well as numeracy, which are the two areas that we're really working on to help with that learning loss. So those will definitely be priority areas as we're looking at our summer school programming. So, I mean, I would have to say that's definitely going to be the focal areas, especially when you're looking at your elementary and middle schools, as being that particular model that's going to be put in place for our summer school programming. So whatever the programming will be, we will start that recruitment efforts to make sure we have teachers interested in serving as a summer school teacher early on, to ensure that we actually have the staffing on hand to start the school year. Of course, I was not in Arlington prior to the summer school starting, so I don't know exactly how summer school was set up this past summer, but that is something we'll definitely start working on early on, as far as with not only finding teachers that are interested in teaching summer school, but also with our recruitment efforts for the upcoming school year, ensuring that we are starting that recruitment earlier on in the process versus waiting due to the challenging times we're now experiencing to find individuals who are interested in teaching.
Great. And I'm gonna, that's kind of a good segue to a question from Sally that really is for both of you. How do you foresee fixing your staffing shortages that you're seeing? I know we've heard a lot of the why it exists, and I know every industry, business community, nonprofit is facing this as well. But what do you have on your radar for the fixes?
Well, let me start there, because I'm not sure that I have a easy solution there. I think that one of the things we're looking at is doing more apprenticeships and internships and recruiting in that way. We're looking at alternative work arrangements, some more flexible work schedules for people, and to attract them. I think that we have especially tried over the last year and a half to not be very directive about how many days people need to be in an office, because they've needed that kind of flexibility, and I think that's helped. We're making adjustments in our fire department. In about 2 weeks, we're gonna, after 4 or 5 years, gonna be changing the schedule around that'll make things more attractive. You know, the people who want to come to work and there are a lot of them, and who want to stay at work are really committed to their jobs, but the challenges they face with childcare, with just, you know, the way the world has changed, we've tried to be as flexible as we can. Pay is a huge piece of it, but it's not the only piece of it. So we, you know, the pandemic has, for better or worse, allowed us to do things in much different and more exciting ways. And we're hoping that that attracts people. And then another big selling point is every new employee, I'm going to kick in the $25 for them to join the Committee of 100. And I think that'll probably tip the scales right in their favor.
Is that a real offer or is that a joke? I'm trying to figure it out.
Well, you'll just have to see.
Okay, well, you might get, you watch out for some emails from me. We would love to have county staff as members of the Arlington Committee of 100. If you put it down, I'm going to pick it up. And Dr. Mayo, do you have anything to share there?
Yes, I mean, and Mark brings up some very good points, especially in the on the county government side, the option or the flexibility to be able to work from home or to work remotely. Wherein in the educational sector, that's a lot more, that's very difficult, especially if the only option is a face-to-face learning environment. So we do experience some of those same challenges from some of our, say, central office level positions, such as maybe in our finance office, technology, wherein some of that work or all their work really could be done in a remote environment. However, how does that look for teachers, principals, assistant principals, support staff members that must report into the office on a daily basis? So that's something we're making sure we're modeling. But at the same time, it also can hurt us because some of those same individuals can go elsewhere and, of course, work in a remote environment. So that's definitely a challenge that you're going to see in Arlington, and not only Arlington, but in a lot of school systems across the country, but also looking at how can we start our recruitment efforts a lot earlier. Arlington in previous years has really never had a problem finding talent to come to Arlington to work. Back in, I want to say 2018, it was actually one of the highest paid starting salaries for teachers. And of course, others start seeing that. So they look at things, they do compensation studies, and they decide, hey, we want to be number one. So now we are lagging some of our counterparts. So we have just recently completed a compensation study wherein we are working with our board and also with the county board in the help of with Mark as well, to see how can we look at right fitting some of those steps that our employees missed in previous years, and then also being able to provide step increases and also cost of living adjustments to make us more competitively matched across the DMV region. So we just presented that during a work session in December, and we will be moving forward with that during the budget development process to ensure that it's something we will be able to do for the upcoming fiscal year 23. That is one area, because compensation is something that people are looking at, but it's only one of many areas. So we have to continue to get very creative with how are we going to find, say, teaching positions. We've just increased our rate of pay for our substitutes. We're doing some other initiatives for substitutes to attract them and to make them want to come in and work on a more frequent basis. But it's all about really strategically being able to get your hiring in a very expedient process or manner as we are competing against other school systems, especially for teaching positions and also for our support staff. So when you are number one or very close to number one, Arlington is definitely a community-oriented county, and people really love working here. So we have to find ways, how can we compensate them correctly, but at the same time provide that level of compassion and leadership that want people to stay here to work, and also to bring and attract people to the area to want to work here.
One thing I'd love, because I think we've got, I think a lot of people in our audience are very interested in staffing. I've seen a couple of questions come in around that, and I'm also personally very interested. So I'm wondering, I'm going to add this. I'm sorry to everyone in the audience. This is a Hannah question, because I think it's an important one. I'm wondering if y'all can paint a picture for us of what it's looking like on the ground for your staff members, what you're hearing from them about what are the things. The teachers are especially what's on my mind, but I'm thinking of it with the county staff too. You know, what are the challenges they're facing day to day that's making it hard when we hear about this great resignation of people who are leaving, and it's hard to keep talent. What does that look like for them in their daily life?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to be really cautious here because I can come up with about 60 or 70 different examples, and it's going to be different depending on the job. I just like to give an example for some of the pressures that employees are facing. For example, we have commercial driver license staff that are responsible for driving our plows. And we had a storm, you know, whether it was like a week or week and a half ago. We have CDL drivers who are now, they're under a mandate for me to get a vaccine. And for some of them, that is a real bridge for them to have to cross. They are down staff because some of their coworkers have COVID. Some of them got stuck on 95 trying to get here. I guess they were hanging out with Tim Kaine, having bread or something. But, and not only that, they're trying to do the work, make up for the work of the people who aren't here. And they also have family at home sometimes who are struggling with a lot of the issues. So, you know, that's for people who have to come in, and people who have to work from home have a different set of issues. I'm not going to say they're better or they're worse. And just the psychological stress. I know parents who have school kids are going through a huge amount of stress. And everybody is going through a lot of stress. So I just use that as one example. And, you know, the only thing I've said this to employees, and I'm going to say it to all our residents whenever I can, which is that we need to inject a little bit of grace. I try to do it when I'm talking to employees. Employees try to do it when they're talking to residents, and residents need to do it when they're dealing with our employees. So that's just my thoughts on that.
Dr. Mayo, anything you want to add there?
Yes, and just to touch on that as well, it is great to work in a county wherein it's a very collaborative working relationship with county government. Just last week with that storm, I was working with the Equipment Bureau office in regards to needing some support and some help as far as CDL drivers. So we do actually have some of our bus drivers who are also supporting the county to ensure that we can keep our streets and all open and safe for everyone to continue to go on about their normal lives. So I've already started those conversations with county employees for this upcoming storm that we actually have coming in to ensure they're going to be ready to work as well. So we are definitely seeing a time period wherein we're really working very closely together. And it's just very powerful to see how people are working together to get the job done. And also a good example of that is the fact that we have our central office staff members and other staff members from various offices going out to support our schools to assist any way they can as well. But at the same time, I have to kind of caution everyone, we cannot burn out that set of employees, and we definitely cannot burn out our teachers. And in a lot of cases, a lot of folks are burnt out at this particular time. So what can we do to support and assist? Some things that we have done on our end on some of the early release days that may have been set aside for, say, professional learning, and or maybe it was a day of professional learning for our staff members. We have allowed them to do that remotely, just to kind of do some of those types of activities versus just saying you must be at work because this is what's noted on the calendar. So just trying to find ways to find that grace, as Mark has mentioned as well, to let employees know that, yes, we see you, we care about what's going on with you in your professional as well as your personal life, and what can we do to help?
Thank you. That a little bit opened the door. There's a question that we get a question like this pretty often when we have forums that are involved county and schools. And I know you referenced some of the crossing and staff, so that made me think of this one. Ethel was asking about how can you describe the roles and responsibilities of what the county does versus what the schools do, especially in terms of the elected boards and staffs of the organization. Ethel was pointing out there's sometimes a perception in the community of the pointing the fingers at the other one. So can you clarify what the difference in roles is and the accountability around that?
So I would like to comment that for most people who live in the county, and I've lived here a long time, thank you for pointing out how people are calculating how old I am, Hannah, because you said I lived here since 1903. But people, for the most part, people do not make a distinction between the county and schools. And they say, why is the county doing this? Why is the county doing that? And they do not spend a lot of time studying the difference between the school board's authorities and the county board's authorities. I will tell you that there's and John's referenced it several times, there's just an enormous amount of our time that's spent talking to each other and working with each other. And as far as areas of responsibility, I would really suggest people go back. There's about a 10-minute snippet in the county board meeting that was held on January 4th, where the Civic Federation came in and asked a series of questions. And each county board member went around and took about a minute or two to explain the distinction between the county board role and the school board role and the importance of that distinction. John reports to the superintendent, who reports to the school board. They have got their marching orders, their series of work to do. I wouldn't presume to tell them how to do anything about schools. And I know that John doesn't presume to tell me anything about how to do some of our work, but at the same time, we do share information as often as we can. So I'll just leave it at that.
And I would have to say, Mark really just, he's spot on with that. And I've worked in several other school systems wherein this level of collaboration was not noted. And we actually have, where I'm a part of the meeting, as well as with Dr. Duran and our chief of staff, where we meet monthly with Mark and his team. And then, of course, there are other multiple meetings wherein Mark and Dr. Duran also meet separately. And we're always in a lot of dialogue. And just from talking with our school board members, especially our chair, Dr. Cannon, she's in constant communication with the county board also. So there's definitely a lot of communication going on just to ensure that everyone is on the same page regarding matters that pertain to the county.
Great. And Mark had referenced our friends over at CivFed, who we often have a lot of overlap with. I know a lot of our folks in the audience here today are also members of CivFed. I think I'm not spotting our CivFed folks just because I'm not looking enough through the audience, but if someone wanted to send a link to that video from CivFed at the beginning of the year, we'd be happy to put that in the chat. It's a good supplement to a good additional thing to watch in terms of looking forward to 2022. I tuned into that as well. And if any of our CivFed folks want to stick that in the box, we'll stick that in the chat as well. For those of you who want to go in really deep tonight. We are getting a little tight on time here. We have a couple other questions. I'm wondering, there was one in particular that I'm hoping, Dr. Mayo, would you mind, Mark and Dr. Mayo, could I go over just a couple minutes, single digit number of minutes here to get in one more question? Is that all right? I know y'all are busy, but also know we have a lot of good content here. Marianne is asking, what targeted academic strengthening resources will be dedicated to students who are struggling? I think that's an important one to get in here tonight.
Okay, in regards to just trying to accelerate learning, we are working, looking at some of our funding sources to provide some literacy materials. We're working through the process to start getting that in place for some of our learners, especially at the elementary and middle school levels, and also some mathematics resources as well for our students. So we're definitely looking at some of those resources. Then also, of course, stay tuned as far as what summer school will look like, because we'll be looking at those options as well, as far as what exactly are the issues or concerns from individual students, to make sure we have some type of individualized learning plan for our students to ensure that they are able to get whatever they may need in the area of instruction. So exact information as far as specifics of what we're actually doing at the current time, unfortunately, I do not know in details. I will have to, really work closely with our chief academic officer to see exactly some of the plans that have been made in conjunction with her staff in the areas of not only in mathematics in the ELA office, but also in the sciences and also in social studies and our world languages to ensure that we're keeping our students up and also continue to be a premier school district.
Great, thank you, Dr. Mayo. And I'm gonna, before we conclude, Mark and Dr. Mayo, if people want to, as we talk about looking forward into 2022, we have a lot of question marks. Clearly, we have a lot of stay tunes, and that's just the nature of where we are in COVID. If people want to stay tuned, if they want to stay up to date, if they want to see how things change next month, next year, where do they get their information from? How do they hear from you?
I know for a lot of people, I would still encourage them. We push out regular updates on COVID, and you can go to the county website, and we have a lot of new information that's coming out. I always make a point and on a regular basis at board meetings, county board meetings, to give an update on where we are with things. I know for a lot of people, it is, and I'm one of them, a lot easier to say, oh, why is that? Why is the curative kiosk closed at Arlington Mill? I'll write a county board member and ask, but we actually have all that information on our website. We have so much information on our website that I think it's sometimes hard for people to spend the time to do that. And they like to just pick up the phone or write an email. And I encourage people to do that. I've always had my phone number publicly available in my email, and I answer every single one that I get. There's a lot of information out there. And then I think people really should, if they have questions, if they have to decide whether they have a question about schools or the county, I think they should always ask the question about schools first. I think that's much more important, makes my day much easier.
Thanks, Mark. And I just saw, thank you, Scott. He in the chat put the Arlington County Government COVID-19 page in our chat for those of us in the audience with Zoom too. Dr. Mayo, how do people hear from you all?
We have the school talks updates that go out every Wednesday. It not only goes to our families, but also to our staff. And whatever we're presenting out there, we're also providing on our webpage. So our webpage has a lot of robust information for our community and other stakeholders to take a look at as far as what's going on as far as with COVID protocols, what's going on as far as instruction, just anything pertaining to APS. We also have other social media platforms such as Twitter, where we're providing information. So those are just different areas to kind of take a look at. And also, being that we may have a lot of parents on this call, also just reaching out to their schools to get that information that is more individualized for their particular child, based upon if they're at an elementary, middle, or high school, all three levels, to determine exactly what they may be doing at their school, at the school level.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up there. I think you both got us some really fantastic information tonight. If you're with us on the line, stick with me for just one more minute. First, just thank you, Dr. Mayo and Mark. These are some of the busiest men in Arlington. They have a lot on their plate. So the fact that they are willing to come to the Committee of 100, and in Mark's case, to keep coming back, and Dr. Mayo, I know you're only a few months, haven't hit that year mark yet, but in the future, I'm sure we will keep asking you, and I hope you will also continue to come back. So thank you both for making the commitment to our audience tonight. If you joined us tonight and you want to share the recording, it is on our Facebook page. You can view it there. We will have it up on the website. As I say every month, we are an all-volunteer organization. I do not commit to how quickly that goes up on the website, but it will be up there, I will say, soon. A reminder to please save the date for our February program on Tuesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. We are finalizing the details on that right now. So I expect we'll have a message out hopefully within the next week. Stay tuned there. And again, thanks to Scott in the background. Like I said, makes me look better than I really should every month. All right, and we're gonna conclude for the evening. Have a great night, everybody.